How about a fairy tale fun fact? Rumpelstiltskin is probably one of the best well-known fairy tales where a magical being makes a bargain with the hero that the hero can get out of if the hero guesses the magical being's name. But there are many fairy tales and folk tales with this same plot point all around the world, and the names, as well as some other things, change with the region. First up, Germany alone has at least 7 other versions of this story. And before we get into them, let's face it up front, I am not going to pronounce these very well. Pause to read my disclaimer. Too long didn't read. I am doing my best here. Anyway, some of the other German Rumpelstiltskin characters are Hiebsche, Holzfräulein Bonnefjörlein, Negenduma, Kugel, not the tasty kind, Hoppetinken, and Zirk. Now in other places there's Terendando, Tom Tit Tot, Teddy Top, Titillature, and Triopla Trupla. Now in Wales there are several versions. You could meet a gent named Gwarwyn a Throat, or one of a couple lady fairies. One is named Penelope and the other is Silly Godut. In Scotland it's a lady fairy named Whoopity Stoorie, and Ireland has a second one, a lady fairy named Eventrot. And there are many more. Denmark, Austria, Hungary, Russia all have their versions. Would you like to hear me massacre their names? And would you like to know some of the differences between the fairy tales? Let me know, and let me know if there's a Rumpelstiltskin I missed. What is it that we can't resist about Rumpelstiltskin? Is it the father and his bald-faced lie that his daughter can turn straw into gold? Is it the mystery of what the fork Rumpelstiltskin is going to do with that baby when he gets it? Is it that he literally Kool-Aid mans himself through the floor when he doesn't get his way? All of that combines into a very memorable fairy tale, but what about the other tales that use the same motif of having to guess a magical creature's name? Now, some of the tales are very similar to Rump in that the person is trying to complete a task with the creature's help. But in other versions, marriage itself is on the line. Sometimes the creature wants to marry the mortal girl, like in Germany's Double Turk or in Austria's Kreuzermugeli. In another Austrian version, a count gets lost in the forest, and an imp offers to help him, but then demands that the count turn over his wife if he can't guess the imp's name. And in the Welsh tale Penelope, a mortal man captures a fairy woman, and he keeps her captive. But she tells him, "You can only marry me if you guess my name," and unfortunately for her, he does. But like in many Selkie tales, he eventually loses her again. Rumpelstiltskin can turn straw into gold, but let's explore the unique tidbits of other versions of his story. In Japan's The Carpenter and the Ogre builds a difficult bridge over a rapid river for a carpenter. Then he demands that the carpenter hand over his eyeballs unless he can guess the ogre's name, which is Oniroku. In Germany, the dwarf Kugel tries to trick a girl into marriage. When she discovers his name, she feels kind of bad about it, so she crafts him a red jacket as a consolation prize. Italy's Terendando is called a distinguished fairy. I'd call him a little dickhead because he smacks the girl who manages to guess his name. Hungary's Winterkobel is a very wholesome tale. The title character is an old wise man who lives in a tree, and he rescues a little girl who's abandoned in the woods, raising her as his own. When she comes of age, a king starts courting her, and it's the king who has to guess Winterkobel's name in order to win the girl's hand. The imp in Germany's Nagenduma can turn himself into a bird. In fact, he's in his bird form when he's singing his name for all to hear. I have to give it to him. He really tried to keep his secret. He just forgot to sing in his bird language. Fairy tales evoke such varied meanings and relevance through changing eras, changing storytellers, and changing audiences, and Rumpelstiltskin is no different. I dug into some writing by well-regarded scholars of the folklore field and found some interesting reflections on the grim fairy tale. Jane Yolen is a children's author who has dug both into folklore as well as historical fiction, specializing in the Holocaust. For her, those two genres are not separate. In a piece she wrote in 1993 for the Journal of the Fantastic and the Arts, Yolen discusses how Rumpelstiltskin encapsulates a lot of anti-Semitic ideas that were prevalent in fairy tales. A little man with his large nose and his conditional access to gold. His suspicious desire to have an infant from the presumably Christian king and queen. The fairy tale puts a bad taste in Yolen's mouth. And she's referenced themes we see in Rumpelstiltskin in her books on the Holocaust for youth, including the power of names. Scholar Jack Zipes comes to the tale from a different angle. He's written on its portrayal of women in industry, specifically the changing role of women in spinning in an increasingly industrial Europe. In older times, and in older fairy tales, spinning was mostly regarded as a woman's craft and was held in high regard among classes and cultures. But with the invention of the spinning wheel, reverence for the art began to diminish, as well as women's roles in the industry. And this is reflected in Grimm's Rumpelstiltskin, when the male character literally takes the role of spinning out of the miller's daughter's hands, setting her up instead for a role of domesticity. And just as the fiber arts industry began to shift into the management of men, Zipes notes how folklorists have also shifted their emphasis on this folktale to the role of the male Rumpelstiltskin, rather than looking at the role of our protagonist, the miller's daughter. Especially in the trope of Rumpelstiltskin's name, which Zipes doesn't consider to be a very important aspect of the tale at all. Now, Anne Schmiesing, a scholar in both fairy tales and disability culture, takes a special interest in the names in Rumpelstiltskin, but not in Rumpelstiltskin's name. She has written about the significance of the names that the queen incorrectly guesses when she's trying to guess Rump's name. In later versions of Rumpelstiltskin that Wilhelm Grimm revised, the queen first guesses the names of the three magi when she guesses Rumpelstiltskin's name. To Schmiesing, this is significant because it emphasizes the role of piousness in motherhood that Grimm was often emphasizing in later revisions of their tales. But on her second day of guessing, the queen asks about names that are often associated with disease and deformity. In both instances, these specific names that the miller's daughter uses are not referenced in early folk versions of the tale. So it's often pieced together by scholars that Wilhelm Grimm likely added these names in his revisions. Given Wilhelm's lifelong struggle with respiratory disease, as well as the delicacy around newborn health of his era, including struggles with his own children's health, Schmiesing suggests that this choice of names by Wilhelm could have been influenced by his own personal fears around disease and disability. Also, it's probably Wilhelm, right? Sorry if I've been mispronouncing it this whole time. In conclusion, TL didn't watch. Rumpelstiltskin is merely 1,000 words long, and there is so much to draw from it. This is the true magic of fairy tales, and I hope you've enjoyed exploring Rumpelstiltskin as much as I have. Pause for further reading. Friends, if you are in the Providence, Rhode Island area, I have set a date for my very first Fucked Up Fairy Tales live show. I would love for you to mark it off on your calendar. And here you can see some ways to support my work. Tired of not seeing my content more regularly? Perhaps you could try these steps. Thanks for watching.